Welcome to the Fantasy Formula 1 podcast. I'm Paul. That's Ben. Thank you for joining our conversation. When I say it is a conversation we would be having anyway, that is very true. That is why we started doing this, because we find ourselves talking about it. But you can feel free to reach out to us on all the social medias. You can email us, info@fantasyformula1podcast.com. And you can be like our friend Andrew, who commented on our Spotify. And he mentioned how he liked how you said... last episode, you mentioned how I reserve the right to be smarter tomorrow.
Yeah,
and that resonated with him.
Oh, good. So the biggest contribution I've brought to the show is something that I've stolen from somebody else. No, it's great. Awesome. Yeah, continue to take that tradition of stealing a comment. I'm glad it resonated with you.
That's perfect. So today we have a lot of stuff going on. So
yeah,
a lot of stuff went on with the Chinese Grand Prix. All right, it was the first sprint race. A lot of stuff to dive into.
And just to set the stage, we're recording this on the Tuesday after the race, so it's still fairly fresh in our minds. And
but we have been able to kind of calm down about it.
That's true.
I'm not going to lie. I went into the app and was about to rage change some of my stuff.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I walked myself off the edge for that. Back from the edge for that.
I've been just enjoying all the memes from this week. all of the reactions to Daniel Ricciardo, to Lance Stroll. We'll get in. I know we'll get into that, but man, oh man, see, real quick before we get into it, you think, well, why would we pay attention to anything but the top couple of teams? Because everywhere else on the grid, it is so juicy and it is so much fun.
Wonderful. It is wonderful, and as soon as you think it's not, Lance Stroll rear ends Daniel Ricciardo. For example, we're not getting into it yet, but
no, sure, but again, as we've gone through this process, I've kind of thought to myself, okay, well, week in, week out, there will be a race, there will be a winner. It's probably going to be one of maybe two or three teams, and then it might, or there might be a little surprise. But how long is this going to stay interesting? It's every week there is something just insane going on. And is it soap operas for men? Absolutely, it is. But I will be here for it because it's
absolutely awesome. So for today, we're going to be talking about largely race reactions and diving into a whole lot to unpack about the race.
Yeah,
and then we're going to touch on your fantasy teams.
Sure.
However, next episode, because I'm behind in my analytics, next episode is when we're going to do a deep dive into the fantasy numbers, because since this race was the first sprint race, there's double the numbers, and we get to juxtapose them.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to make sure I have my conclusions and the work to support those conclusions.
Yeah. So a little pullback of the man behind the curtain situation here. We typically will come out of the race weekend, record our reaction episode, and then take a lunch break or talk about some random topic, and then come back and record the fantasy Formula 1 specific episode and then release them back to back.
Yeah.
This week we got 2 weeks before the next race, so we're going to talk race reactions, and I will, as you said, I'll go over my teams, but then we'll get into the what we should be doing moving forward next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Because there's just so much to talk about this week, and I've been waiting for the sprint weekend because you have twice the qualifying. So I'll say, I need to make a note of that. So sprint qualifying, team locks.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that. Hang on a second. Sprint qual lock. Because I'd forgotten to add that to my list. Okay. So we're going to do that. I'm going to go over, as far as the order we're doing today, I'm going to go through a race recap because I take really good notes that are improving more and more.
Hey.
I don't know if I'll be able to keep it inside the 30 seconds that I did last week.
No, that's
we'll
fine.
See how it goes. We're going to go over words and jargon update because Baby RB, as we call him, has a new name that we'll be discussing. Then we're going to be going over rules and procedures because the rules and procedures for the sprint weekend, I knew the order had changed, but the rules had changed about when they can and can't touch a car. And last week we were like, nope, this is how it works. Turns out I was out of date with the information I had. So we'll update that. We have an upgrade update because a couple cars showed up in China with some updates. We'll discuss those. We'll go over damage and DNFs because a lot of DNFs that I love. If you're a friend of the show, you know that I firmly believe in fantasy Formula 1 DNFs will make and break your season. And that's the biggest liability that all teams bring because you get negative 20 points if you DNF. So I want to have a special segment about it, and I have a lot of numbers about that, but also I have some interesting some information about Williams. Then this is a new segment that I personally love, the Hot Goss. If anybody, friends, if you've watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the TV show.
Oh yeah,
they're ultra straight laced boss. He's always like, whenever he's trying to be cheeky or whatever, he's like, yeah, the hot goss. So that's why, we have it here. But anyway, we have some hot goss about Fernando Alonso, and then we're going to be talking about your team, your fantasy team lineup, and how your team did.
Yeah, and in truth, I've had a busy couple days. That,
sure.
When I take a look at my team, we will be seeing that all together for the first time, because I have not checked to see how that's gone. So my first sprint weekend, and I did make some switches based on what we talked about last week. We'll see if it worked or not, and you'll be getting my reactions in real time here.
Perfect. And that is one of the great things about fantasy Formula One, as opposed to like fantasy football, fantasy basketball, fantasy baseball, is you only have to lock in your teams before the race starts.
Yeah.
So it could be a drawback, because those of us who vibe on this really enjoy watching it and really enjoy messing around with it and tweaking it. But you can finish the race, wait 3 days, and now you looking at your team right now is just fine. You're not days and weeks behind in what's happening.
Absolutely.
Kicking it off with my race recap. Now, someday I would love to be able to do like they do on F1 Live and pull it all from memory. I am not that good, so I'm going to have to use my notes.
No, you said, you'll get there. So are we starting with the sprint?
Yes.
Okay,
so
cool.
I'm going to go from the very beginning of the weekend all the way through.
All right. And and what we've talked about so far with the sprint is it is so much lower stakes. It is so much of a lower stakes event for those top tier teams. Mm-hmm. And this is really the opportunity for some of those mid and lower tier teams to actually try to snag some points.
Exactly.
So I was actually kind of surprised, based on that discussion, what the outcomes were.
We were saying we reserve the right to be better tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll be smarter tomorrow. And I was sitting there when I was watching the sprint race, I was like, man, did I underestimate this? Did I guess wrong?
Well, no, and I owe you an apology, because I just started going into analysis before you've even done your rundown yet.
I bit off on it. I bit off on it. I was like, yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, yeah. Other side note, before we recorded, we were like, hey, how can we be better at hosting this whole thing? And we had the slew of like honest moment notes with each other, and and now, as going into the record, I find myself violating every single one of those things that we discussed. So I apologize.
One of my notes was, don't bite off on everything we talk about. Try and stick to the notes. And I'm like, yeah, so about that. Anyway,
you're welcome for testing.
I appreciate that.
Failed.
I failed the test.
Yes. All right.
So the free practice was just them trying to kind of figure out what was going on. There was really loose. The track was the first time it had been raced on in 5 years. And again, this is all going to be wave top stuff. If there's something I say that you're like, oh, this is important, go and throw it in.
Oh, sure.
The track was painted, I guess. It wasn't refinished. So all the cars were really slick. They were racing the hardest compounds possible.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing. And then during sprint qualifying, it rained. And everybody was sliding off the track in the sprint qualifying. And that was all. I was on the go, so I didn't put too many notes for sprint qualifying. But for the sprint race, now I need to, let me click on the right sheet. Where to go? And China race notes right there. So if I was better, I would go ahead and have all this queued up, but I'm not quite there. So for sprint qualifying, Lando Norris qualified P1 for sprint, then Lewis Hamilton, then Fernando Alonso.
Yep.
So that kind of gave some credence that Max Verstappen qualified P4 for the sprint, right? So how we're talking about, well, maybe it's lesser stakes, but they just have a different strategy. There's a different car setup for the sprint.
Absolutely.
And I'm not smart enough about engineering to know what that is. But Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, then Lando Norris finished qualified P1, P2, P3 in the sprint qualifying. So Lando defended Hamilton, but he got off the track and then dropped down to 7th, and then he ended up. Oh, so that was for the sprint race. Sorry. So, okay. So this one, the new format. I apologize. Thank you for sticking with me about the reconstruction. So after sprint qualifying, it was Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso.
Yep.
Then Max Verstappen was P4. Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc 7, Oscar Piastri 8, Valtteri Bottas 9, Joe Ganyu 10. So it's pretty mixed up. Usually you have the Ferraris and you have Max Verstappen, then you have, Sergio Perez down somewhere in 5, which he rang true to form.
Sure.
But Lando Norris is normally further down. Freaking Lewis Hamilton is normally in the bottom of the top, towards the bottom of the top 10. So the order was kind of juxtaposed.
Yep.
And then when you start the actual race itself, Lando defended Hamilton, but then got off the track and he dropped down to 7th. Max worked his way up to pass Hamilton around lap 9. So Max wins the sprint.
Mm-hmm.
He wins a sprint with a 13-second difference between him and P2 after 10 laps of leading.
Yeah.
So around China, Max was putting on a second a lap that he was in the lead. And then there was a lot of fighting between, and this is one of where you alluded to at the very beginning. There was a lot of fighting. I said mighty because that's what the announcer uses. There was mighty fighting between Alonso, Perez, both of the Ferraris, and then Alonso got a puncture, and then both Ferraris bumped tires, but they didn't have any damage.
Right.
So when I was saying, hey, you know what? The higher teams, they might not care so much. The lower teams are going to be running for the sprints. This, and I want your opinion, this makes me think I was very much wrong in that, because you had both Ferraris, you have one of the Red Bulls, and you have Fernando Alonso fighting for third?
Yeah.
Fourth? What was it? Yeah, let me look at the outcomes. But yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, so here's where it gets interesting, though, is I would say, yes, maybe we were mistaken in our initial analysis, but you throw in the slick surface, which,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a great equalizer. Just because, so often you have great drivers limited by the platform or the vehicle they find themselves in. So if all of a sudden they are wildly thrown off from what their expectations are, it does come down so much more to driver instincts. And I think where we still hang on to a shred of legitimacy as commentators here is, look at all of a sudden Lewis Hamilton, great driver, seven-time world champion, in a car that has been progressively more disappointing, somehow wrangles second place on the sprint.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, and I don't know. I don't believe this year he's gotten above. Is it above 9th place?
Yeah.
No, I think he's gotten 6 once. But
regardless, it's been very disappointing.
It's been a very disappointing Lewis Hamilton season again. But all of a sudden, he gets second place amidst a slew of really, really less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
So the dude can still drive.
The car just needs to be able to meet up with him for it.
But otherwise, from P3 to P8, I would say it's still all the usual suspects. But with the exception of Zhou Yu getting points at P9,
he did.
Kick Sauber's in the points.
Boom.
So
but you're right. It was pretty standard. So Sergio Perez finished so it was Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez P3, then both of the Ferraris, then Lando Norris finished P6, and so with that, he was defending pretty hard, and then he got off the track.
Yeah.
And so then he had to come back in and he had to finish. So, okay, fair enough. Then Oscar Piastri, then George Russell. So go Mercedes again. Zhou Yu finished P9, and then Kevin Magnussen finishing P10. Again, go Haas.
Yep. And so real quick, going from sprint qualifying where you had Alonso in 3rd, and then the sprint, Alonso gets 20th because he was DNF.
So,
do you have any notes on why he did not finish?
Absolutely. So Fernando Alonso, towards the end of the race, you have Alonso, Perez, and both Ferraris fighting for P3. And if you ever wanted to go back and look at something that was super interesting, go back and watch the last little bit of that race of the sprint in China, because they were all neck and neck. You had, the one defending against the other. So you had the Ferraris defending against Alonso, or Alonso defending against Ferraris, and they were all going back and forth. And then during a turn, Perez just snuck by him.
Yeah.
And then Alonso bumped tires with somebody. And he didn't bump tires, but he got a puncture somewhere around there.
Okay.
So then he fell out and he had to go into the pits and he didn't finish the race.
Got it.
But that was that was at lap 17 of 19. Well, I'll go into that in a second.
Oh.
And then both Ferraris then were, when they say going wheel to wheel, they bumped wheels fighting for 4th.
And they've threatened to do that so many times.
So much. And they're doing it. And so that's why Fernando Alonso didn't finish, and that's why Perez finished 3rd.
Gotcha.
All right, or 4th or 3rd. Let me click. I have to click back and forth between the sheets. And that's why he finished 3rd. So they were fighting for 3rd. So down the order is where Fernando Alonso is. So by rules, I won't worry about looking it up right now. But basically, you get a DNF if you don't accomplish a certain number of laps, a certain percentage.
Oh,
of the
I
race.
see. Okay.
So, which is why, by definition, a few races ago, when on the last lap George Russell crashed, he didn't DNF.
He got far enough
as per fantasy rules.
I see.
In real life, he got a DNF.
Okay.
As per fantasy rules, if you complete a certain percentage, again, I don't want to waste time right now not waste time, but I don't want to spend time digging around the computer for it. But since Fernando Alonso finished and he went into the pits, he technically, like by the time he probably got out, actually stopped at lap 17, maybe lap 18. By the time he actually went around, limped to the pits, and called it. Yeah. So since he did not cross the finish line at the end, he officially got a DNF.
But in fantasy,
land, he will not. However, since he did not DNF, he finished last. He started out third. 17 cars passed him. He got negative 17. Officially, he got a DNF.
Better than negative 25.
Exactly.
20? 20, okay.
Better than negative 20.
Okay, no, that's a really important detail. Yeah. Okay, so
And I was confused because I was like, oh, man, he got a DNF. No, he only got negative 17 points for that.
Okay.
Moving on to we're a little away from me there. Moving on to the actual GP qual.
Yeah.
To the actual qualifications. And this is a big thing that we're probably going to cover later, but we're going to cover that in the rules and procedures in a second. So in GP qualification, we'll talk about that Manuel last year. Yep, cool. And then, so Yuki's DRS didn't work for the first lap.
Can I recommend you start, go through the...
Moving on to the GP qualification, Yuki Tsunoda's DRS didn't work for the first lap. I don't know what all went on about that, but he got out in a lap, didn't do much, and then said, hey, my DRS doesn't work, and he went back to the pits, got it fixed.
Oh, that's rough.
So that was fine. But with all these qualifications, you have your set time, and a lot of guys will just wait to go out and try and get the lap once it's track evolution. And
okay, you know what? You just hit on something that I had no visibility on. So DRS zones, they still apply in qualifying laps?
Yes, and you don't need to wait for them.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So right away you can have DRS all the time. You don't need to be a certain time around anybody.
Okay. See, qualifying, I just figured you're going for time based and nothing else. So you're not, you're obviously trying to have enough awareness not to crash into your fellow driver. Mm-hmm. But so DRS is still a thing.
DRS is still a thing.
That's very interesting.
And you don't need to be within the 1 second of whoever in front. Just when you're in the DRS zone, you have your DRS. So you get to do it. So that way everybody can use DRS, because some cars are built around DRS. Yeah. Right? Like they might be an overtaking machine because they're expecting to get bunched up with a lot of people, so they want to be able to quick overtake, but they might not be able just to, have a high top end without it or whatever.
Okay, so would you say there's a lot of intentionality then that goes into, hey, we know that we're not going to have the fastest car. Let's throw a couple more physicists at our DRS system. Yeah. Just because we are going to be in the thick of it for the majority of the race. We are not going to be Max, who is 15 seconds ahead of everybody else off in his own little world of victory.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely part of it, because even though and for each car, you'll probably have multiple different, and it happened in one of the races that one of the Ferrari drivers, we're going to go for plan D, which meant they had a plan A, B, and C already queued up. And that was just one driver in one race. Yeah. So my guess is as soon as, how the field stratifies out, they're like, hey, listen, we won't be able just to run away from everybody, but we'll have DRS. Okay. So that way we can pass people. And then if they ever make the mistake of passing us, we can pass them.
Pass them right back.
Yeah.
Okay. So that speaks a lot more to the intricacy of the driving strategy, even within the qualifying laps, to me. Because again, before I was just thinking, it's just you're racing against yourself. You want to go as fast as you can. Hopefully you place yourself well, while also avoiding other cars.
Yeah.
But no, it's I want to be near these guys if I have a strong DRS based system, because that's where I'm going to perform my strongest.
Yeah, and you can qualify to that point too.
Wow.
So you can. No, absolutely.
So cool. All right,
I love it.
Thank you.
And that was something, honestly, I wasn't 100% aware of until this race.
Okay.
In my head, and again, I don't know why I thought this, I was just like, well, you don't need DRS in qualifying, or you just always can do it. I didn't really give it too much thought, I guess. But yeah, you have DRS in qualifying.
Neat.
That's a great filler sound. Then Sargent spun. He didn't hit the wall in turn 9 at the end of Q1, and that kept him in the bottom 5. So in Q1, he was doing well. He wasn't in the top 10, but he was going to go on to Q2.
Oh.
It looked like he was on. How about this? He was on pace for it, but he spun out, and he had waited towards the very end of qualifying, so he has one good lap, and he spun it, didn't hit the wall, saved the car, but that was it for him. And then who were dropped in Q2? Sargent, Hamilton dropped in Q1. Dropped in Q1. Hamilton, Sargent, Joe Ganyu, Yuki Tsunoda, Kevin Magnussen. So, Paul, how many of those drivers did you have on your fantasy team?
So many.
So many I had, but that's okay. And then after Q2, Stroll, Ricciardo, Ocon, Albon, and Gasly. So, Paul, how many people did you have there? At least
still
one.
a few, yeah.
Still a few.
Well, so there's always a bright side, and that if your drivers are starting low on the grid, you've got room for overtakes,
especially if you have a driver like Hamilton.
Yeah,
right? You have. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like they're a bottom of the top 10 team, and if for some reason he's starting 18th,
yeah,
like you have a chance. So on to the race. Any questions about qualifying?
No, that was quite edifying. Thank you.
Cool. Yep. So on to the race.
Yes.
Race was pretty much standard. Nothing happened in the big turn. We both thought there was going to be a whole lot going on.
And when we say the big turn, we're talking about in China, turn 1 into turn 2 is it's a 270-degree turn that shrinks in radius as you make the turn. So you don't just lock in on a certain angle of your steering wheel. You have to progressively be turning tighter and tighter. And then as you come out of that, you immediately rip into basically a U-turn. So you're never given the chance to come out of it and build up a lot of speed. Yeah. It's wild. And again, then if you account for the fact that the road conditions were what they were, coming out of a turn like that into a harsh turn the opposite direction with a slick road, it's kind of a miracle that everyone didn't die.
And do you want to know something that me as an American thinks is ironic?
Sure.
Do you know why the turns are that way?
No.
Because when they built it, it is a yin-yang to wish the driver's luck every lap.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so very deliberate. And this is again covered in the coverage that I watched like multiple times because that's how I operate. And but yeah, it's a yin yang. Every time you start,
nice little humble brag there.
A humble brag, but
it's just what I do.
It's just what I do. I watch the same F1 coverage over and over again, and I love it. But so nothing happened in that. I know last week you and I had been like, man, we're expecting a bunch of crashes. If you watch the qualifying and all the run up to it, people are sliding around.
Oh, sure.
No, everyone kept it chill because probably they all knew they would crash and come up the works.
Yeah.
And anyway, so
now were there crashes?
There were crashes.
There were.
And this is, I know we have just in the text you and I went back and forth about coming here to talk about this. There's a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely.
So feel free to jump in anytime.
Sure.
Lap 20. There is a yellow flag so first off, the race is going swimmingly for the first, there's 58 laps. The first 20 are great. Looking like Max Verstappen is just going to take ahead. No, just sail ahead. Everything's fine. Everything's normal.
Yep.
Then lap 20, Bottas didn't. What happened with Bottas?
So, and again, so I'll say this. Last week I did my big mea culpa for stomping on the Valtteri Bottas flag.
I put him on my team, Valtteri. I did. You were on my prize team. Just saying. And
so I felt bad for the guy because at this point he's P11. Like being Kick Sauber and being middle of the pack, that's awesome. Like you're winning if you're P11, like threatening, flirting with getting into the points. And then all of a sudden, we've got our other segment, the prospect or suspect.
Yeah.
Why is Kick Sauber suspect always?
Because they break.
And
again, just to interrupt you, we had a big conversation about, is it Kick Sauber or is it Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas?
Right.
Okay? And we decided that no, it's Kick Sauber because Bottas, he had 0 points in Bahrain, -1 in Saudi, 2 in Australia, 8 in Japan. When Kick Sauber can actually make the track, they will get you points or at least not cost you many.
Correct.
So they're good. And Bottas, we talked about his record. We talk about his driving record.
Yeah.
His Grand Prix, right? I mean, the championship teams he's been on.
Exactly.
So it has to be Kick Sauber. So
yeah. So love the guy, not the green car.
Not the green car.
His car broke At the time they weren't entirely sure what happened, but he was having a power failure of some kind, and when they found his car on the road, it was shut down and it was stuck in gear, and
you heard it. One of the onboard cameras, you hear and just like done, and then he couldn't get out of gear. What was up with that?
I don't know, but unfortunately, that's not that was
that was the beginning.
Valtteri Bottas's car is the linchpin for just the chaos of the remainder of the race, because at that point, full safety car comes out.
So I'm going to jump in there. There is a virtual safety car and a full safety car. For anybody uninitiated, the virtual safety car is a full track yellow flag. Everybody's speed limited. I'm not sure what the speed limit is, but everyone's speed limited. You can't pass, but you don't need to all bunch up behind the pace car.
Okay.
It's everyone has a track-wide speed limit of whatever, and you can't pass anybody.
At all,
period. You're done passing.
Okay. We need to talk about that.
Yeah, you can go into the pits, and since all the cars are going slower, at China, you saved about 10 or 15 seconds because you have to slow down to 50 miles an hour or whatever it is in the pit lane, stop, and you have to stay that slow until you get out of the pit lane, then you can accelerate again. And with the whole field slowing down, it saves you about 10 seconds a pit stop.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, a virtual safety car comes out, great, jump into the pits, save yourself 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So that is a virtual safety car. A full safety car is what we all know of in racing everywhere else in the world. The pace car comes out, or the safety car they call it. In America, we call it the pace car. The pace car comes out, the whole field bunches up. So as soon as I'm 30 seconds behind you, if it's a virtual safety car, we both slow down to whatever the speed is. I can't catch on you. You can't keep running away.
I see.
But in a full safety car, the guy with the car with the Aston Martin with all the lights pulls out in front of you, and I can come right up to your bumper, and the whole field bunches up.
Okay, I got two things.
Yes.
First, I'm going to keep you honest and remind you to say Aston Martin.
Oh!
Again, we need the Aston Martin swear jar.
We need the Aston Martin, not Austin, Texas. Aston Martin.
But secondarily, I had no visibility on the virtual virtual safety car, because what kind of broke my heart is when I get attached to a project, I have emotional feelings about it. And so the whole concept of the safety car has upset me so much, because like, say you're doing really well in a race, you've got a gap between you and the guy behind you. Like you put some space there, you've done the work, and then all of a sudden someone else crashes, and now your entire lead, with the exception of you just being in front of that other car, is gone.
Yeah.
That's tragic.
It's tragic.
That messes with my heart. So I love the virtual safety car where it's like, here's the speed limit. You can't catch up to the guy ahead of you, but you're all, and the guy behind you, he's got to maintain the same distance. Yeah. That's cool. So it's neat now knowing that there are those progressive levels of we got to take care of some things before we can continue the race. But that really adds to the impact of when you do have that red flag.
Yeah.
When you do have that safety car out.
And let's talk about that red flag.
Yeah.
Are you aware, so you have the virtual safety car,
yes,
the full safety car, and then you have red flag. And a red flag is the race stops, everybody maintains their order and goes and lines up in pit road.
Okay, I was not aware. So this is a great discussion. This is a total blind spot for me. So let's okay. So is that the progression, or are there additional levels where you got virtual, full?
That is the progression.
And then red flag.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Before we move on from that, the reason why red flag is so important is because then you will either start on the grid again, or you can do a rolling start. I'm not sure how they decide, the stewards decide, but when you're lined up single file, you're not in your pit spot.
Yeah.
You line up to the end of pit load and you line up single file, your team can come out and change your tires.
Oh, neat. Okay, cool.
So that way, as soon as you're like, oh my gosh, red flag because, Paul hit the wall.
Yeah.
Then you're like, wow, because we're all red flagged, now suddenly you want to change your strategy. You basically get a free pit stop.
So that makes a lot more sense, where a lot of these guys will drive until their tires are dead.
Absolutely, just in case.
Based on the presumption that there's a chance that something else will happen behind me or ahead of me, and I'll get a free pit stop.
Absolutely it.
Interesting.
And so you will see that where as soon as somebody's driving, not to sum up what you just said, but if somebody's driving 14th, 17th, 18th, they don't have a shot.
Yeah.
They'll just let their tires go bald, just hoping.
Well, I mean, why not? Yeah, you have nothing to lose.
You have nothing to lose. Or you'll see it in this extra heartbreaking, and this happened earlier this season, maybe it was late last season, where you're like, man, I'm going to do an undercut, which we can talk about that later. But you know, I'm going to hurry up and get my tires out, new tires on, so I can jump back up and pass you.
Yeah.
I jump in, jump out. Now I'm 4 or 5 spots back. Red flag.
Okay.
Now everybody goes and gets new tires, and I've lost my advantage, and I lost all the spots
Gotcha.
that I got. I lost all the spots that I went to the initial pit stop for.
Okay.
So it's very heartbreaking.
I'm going to do some subject matter foreshadowing.
Okay.
My daughter just recently learned about what foreshadowing is.
Oh, nice.
She's like super into it. She's like, they discussed something about this 3 chapters ago, and like she's a literary nerd, and I love it. But okay, so on that note,
yeah,
you got the safety car ahead.
Yes.
You are not allowed to pass other cars at that point.
Correct.
Are you?
No, you are not allowed to pass.
Okay, so
cars.
I have to ask, in the limited Formula One footage that I have seen, or when I have been able to watch a race, these cars are now they're now lined up. They've caught up to each other because it's not virtual, you know, and so they can get right up to each other.
Sure.
And whenever you see that, you see the safety car, and usually the camera's in the foreground watching the cars come to them.
Yeah.
So you see the safety car, and then you got all the other cars behind them and doing this, going back and forth and back and forth. I presumed that they were weaving, looking for an opening in position to get ahead and and tighten things up. Is that the case?
That is not the case.
Okay, then why are they doing that?
So how about this? And so at the very start of the race, they're all lined up single files. So and then it says, and there go, right? And then suddenly the 5 lights out. All the cars, then you see them all quick weave out.
Sure.
And that is to try and gain the position.
Absolutely. I get that.
Yeah, that's that. So, but when you're under a full safety car, you're doing this to try and keep heat on your tires, to try and keep your tires warm so they're sticky.
I mean, you're still moving though. Does it make that much of a difference?
It does.
That's
it really does.
Okay.
And we can go into it some, but watch. So there's a optimum range of tire temperature.
Okay.
If you're too cold, you're too slidey. If you're too hot, then it affects your grip and your tires degrade faster.
Gotcha.
So the language you should listen for is you'll be like, oh, tires up to temperature, the tires in the range. So soft tires, so there's the whole spectrum of compounds, right? The soft compound, the softer the compound is, the faster it gets into that temperature range, but the faster it degrades.
Yeah.
The hard tires take a while to get up into that temperature range, but will last a long time, but overall give you a little bit less traction, but you can stay on there for another 20 laps over the softs.
Gotcha.
So, which is why the tire selection at the start of the race matters. You will see people usually in the midsection. In the front, you'll see them start with a medium tire, right? Maybe, like for example, like this week. The front have a medium tire. The guy is starting around 10 to 14, 15, and again, there's pluses and minuses, will have the soft tires. So that way you'll see as soon as, like, for example, this race, if you rewatch it, as soon as the race started, you saw both of it wasn't RB, who was it? I think it was the Kick Saubers jump around and pass the RBs. Why? Because they had the soft tires, RB had the mediums. So the soft tires suddenly had all the traction right away, and they could start passing people.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, but as soon as you have the medium tires, you want to go ahead, and as soon as you're at the front, you want to have a nice balance of tire. So that way, I'm racing against you, and we have medium tires, and so maybe we're not worried about the people with the softs passing us. And if for some reason you go soft and I go medium, and we're on the pole together, you'll jump ahead of me. But in 10 laps, when your tires burn out, I'll pass you, and it won't matter.
Got it.
And so what those other people are trying to do is try and jump ahead to recall, right? Or was it, what's the opposite of foreshadowing? Where you do, is it recall? Where you recall, it's in comedy, right?
I'm with you, yeah.
Call back, that's it.
Yeah.
So to call back to the previous conversation we had.
Bring it full circle.
Bring it full circle.
I like it.
As soon as let's say I'm P14 and you're P10.
Yeah.
I will do a softest compound, maybe you'll do a medium. Start of the race, I jump ahead of you.
But I'm not going to start sweating yet.
You're not going to start sweating until somebody else crashes at the end of lap 1.
Right.
Now suddenly it's a full safety car. We all line up and keep there. Or, God forbid, there's a red flag. We all go into the pits. Now I'm 4 positions ahead of you because I have the softer tires. We all put on a different compound, and I race on from there.
Now, when everyone goes in the pits, are you required to change tires at that point?
No,
okay,
you can do whatever you want.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that's about the hard, medium, soft compounds.
Excellent.
And that is why they zigzag, because depending on your compound, depending on all that, you want to be able to keep that heat up. And this will blow your top a little more. There's a lot of gaps between cars.
Yeah.
Because if I know we're about to start, let's say I'm number 3, right?
Yeah.
I can't pass number 2, but number 4 can't pass me. So as soon as we're coming around onto a straightaway and I want to get a lot of heat in my cars because I want to pass you up ahead of me, I'll slow down and let you get all the distance.
Oh, I gotcha.
And
then you can burn out.
Then I can burn out, and there's probably some speed limit to it.
Oh, sure.
But then I can burn out to quick get the heat on my tires, and then there they go. And you'll see this.
Wild.
And Max Verstappen did it.
Yeah.
As soon as you're coming around, and you'll see Max Verstappen, he'll put a ton of distance between him and the pace car. And then as the pace car's dipping in, you still can't pass Max Verstappen until he crosses the start line.
Gotcha.
So he'll come around that last turn and floor it while everybody's at a virtual standstill around a hairpin, and he'll accelerate. And then everybody else, as soon as I'm 4th, you're 3rd, then there's Perez, and then there's Max. Max is full throttle, then Perez, then you, then I can run.
I see. Okay.
And so it just stretches out the whole field.
So
a bunch of racecraft.
That's very, very interesting, because that makes me wonder if that's what Alonso was doing. So
back to the whole thing.
Going back, that we needed that journey.
Okay,
this was completely valid conversation. But getting back to the race, safety car is out, not the virtual, the
full
on
safety car.
Valtteri Bottas, love you, man, you're out, and now you got cars lined up, and Alonso, I think is he P6?
He's
P4.
He was P4. He was defending.
Okay.
He was the one defending that.
I can't say for sure if he was P4, but he was high in the order.
Yeah, he was doing
at
very
this
well.
point. He slows down, and at that point, as a result, cars ahead of him have to slow down.
So I'm not gonna finish this progressive story, but I'm gonna sign a little bit on that.
Please do.
He didn't just slow down. He slowed down, I think it was still technically on the race line, but he slowed down rapidly because of that first turn.
But he does this.
He does. He brake checks people.
Yeah, I mean, because
it's not brake checking, Fernando. I understand it's racecraft and it's braking.
And coming out of this race, there was no discussion of penalty for him.
No.
This season, there have been discussions from when he has done this before.
Yeah,
he's been penalized before.
He's been racing longer than Yuki Tsunoda's been driving.
Yeah,
and
so Alonso slows down. Cars ahead of him have to slow down.
Yep.
And then Daniel Ricciardo, who we'll talk about more in a second. He's one of the 3 cars that is a DNF.
Yeah.
He was doing all right up to that point. He slows down. Guess who's behind him? Lance Stroll, Alonso's teammate. And he, for whatever reason, doesn't slow down enough, smashes into the back of Daniel Ricciardo.
Yep.
Who, and then another important detail coming up here, causes Daniel Ricciardo to bop into Oscar Piastri, who was doing great,
doing wonderful.
Yeah, he was. He was on track to get to come out P5 in this race.
Yeah, he was doing really great. And thankfully, he didn't retire.
No, exactly.
He just had damage, but this is a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, that impacts me on a personal fantasy team level. So multiple damage there, but Daniel Ricciardo has to retire. His car is done. Oh, also something happened before that where during the safety car, Daniel Ricciardo did get a three car penalty for the upcoming race in Miami because during the safety car he overtook Kevin Magnussen.
Really?
And it was not.
Was that no? You're right. Because was that the one where?
I'm sorry. Other Haas driver, Nico Hülkenberg.
Is that when he was coming out of the pits and he passed him, or is that? I think that was Liam Lawson. Sorry,
I don't know for
not
sure.
Liam Lawson.
It better not be.
We miss you, Liam. No, that was our countryman,
Logan Sargent. Yeah, because Sargent, he finished the race. Good job, man. But he did get a penalty as well. But during the safety car, Daniel Ricciardo did actually overtake Nico Hülkenberg, and so he got a penalty. It would have been a end of race China penalty had he finished the race. But because he had to retire, that penalty is being enforced in Miami in 2 weeks.
Oh, I didn't hear that part.
Yeah,
so they would have pulled him from the race?
No, they wouldn't have pulled him from the race, but he would have been penalized. It would have been like a 10-second or something akin to that.
Gotcha.
So Lance Stroll hits Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo's out. Also, so bad day for Baby RB. Oh, we'll talk about that in a second.
We're doing better at keeping segments organized.
Yeah. Ish. So bad day for RB Racing because Magnussen collided with Yuki Tsunoda, causing him to retire. And that was lap 32. So like Yuki had been doing pretty good until that point.
I had Yuki and Magnussen on my team, and I was like, please,
I had Yuki somewhere.
Oh,
but Magnussen knocked out Yuki.
Yeah.
Lance Stroll knocked out Ricciardo. So RB Racing is a double DNF.
Yeah.
And so that's a bummer.
It was rough. And Ricciardo stayed in for a while, but he had the floor damage, and then he was out for that.
Yep.
Then because of all of those, there's a safety car, and then Hogan and Stroll both got penalties. And then, so this is me. I didn't actually say that. This is me continuing on with the race recap. Then Sargent had the penalty, and then Ricciardo retired, and then the call came out that Piastri had the significant damage that we already talked about.
Yep.
They were P8, and this is an interesting point to bring out, how we talk about teams will handle DNFs and car damage differently depending on where they were.
Yep.
So Oscar Piastri was P8, and he's like, hey, man, I took damage. And they stayed in.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't quit. They kept in the fight. And where did he end up?
He ended up P8.
Oh, did he? Okay,
yeah.
See, so he didn't lose any more spots, or he fell down to P8. Maybe my notes were off.
He got overtaken post damage by one or two cars. If he had not been damaged, he had figured to finish at P5.
Okay, see, but also if he had taken the damage at P15, they might have just retired him to try and save the car.
Sure.
So there's that. Piastri. Alonso was in the pit for let's see here. Alonso pitted for medium tires, and then got passed up to P9, and then lap 48 he started worrying Ferraris in P4 and 5. So yeah, so that was actually pretty cool. So Alonso was in the back of the top 10 because he pitted for medium tires. And then the Ferraris, before he'd started passing people, they're like, hey, Alonso just pitted. We're going to have to deal with him before the end of the race.
Yep.
And they were like well aware of his ability to pass stuff. So he passed Piastri into P7 around lap 50. Lap 51, the top 10 order was Verstappen, Norris, Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Russell, Alonso, Piastri, Hamilton, Hülkenberg. And then, and this is great, Julian Palmer. He's one of the announcers on F1 TV. Julian Palmer's quote of the day. I don't know if Max ever feels threatened when his brakes are working. He doesn't, because he will just light up the brakes and use every bit he has in every turn.
Yeah. And
his brakes, when they quit working, that was what DNF'd him.
Got it.
I think that is an amazing quote by Julian Palmer.
Nice.
So then Max ran over debris on lap 55 and stopped my heart because he called out that he might have taken damage. Turns out he didn't. And then the race ends up with the top 5 being Verstappen, Norris, Perez, Leclerc, and Sainz. And that is the race recap.
Yeah.
A long time, but we covered a lot of some of the other stuff.
Oh, we did, yeah.
Otherwise, so we'll just kind of keep pressing with words and jargon update. Okay,
sure.
So we Red Bull. So you have Red Bull Racing, right? Think Max Verstappen, think Sergio Perez.
Yeah.
Then you have I call him because I'm being cheeky, Baby RB, right?
Yep.
Or it's just RB.
RB Racing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with so turns out they do no longer want to be called RB. They want to be called by their actual team name, which is the Visa Cash App Red Bull, or V-Carb.
Rolls off the tongue.
So they started calling them V-Carbs. And that is what the team, and again, the announcers were discussing it, that is what the team officially wants to be called.
And you were telling me that that update was given to the announcers mid-race.
Given to the announcers, it was, during the warm-up.
Okay.
And none of the logos were changed. It still says RB.
Yeah.
But they officially requested, when they are discussed, they are not RB, because RB is Red Bull.
Yeah.
They all are V-Carb, which is Visa. Because also, and this is a little bit more your world than mine, but as soon as I'm the Visa Cash App and no one talks about me and I'm spending a major bonk on an F1 car, like I want to be talked about.
Well, here's it feels so self-defeating because if you are the Visa, Cash App, Red Bull, or RB team,
Yeah.
you named that so the name would be used in its entirety. And so now being VCarb, it's catchy, but I don't think that's an abbreviation of multiple other sponsor words. I just think that's a weird, fancy, made-up word for F1 world, or
it could be,
or a tie-in with some kind of video game that that sounds like an in-game currency to me.
Yeah, or I mean, because I have my master's degree in creative writing, maybe they sat a bunch of creative people down, like, hey, come up with some name for us that's not RB.
Oh no,
everybody thinks we're.
I guarantee they did, and it sounds catchy, but again, it doesn't make me think about Visa,
That's
Red
true,
Bull,
it doesn't.
or Cash App.
Cash App. Yeah,
So-
you're right.
So again, catchy, but I think they missed the mark.
Maybe I know we could take bets on if they change it again before like the midseason.
Oh,
break.
interesting. Because a we're what, a quarter of the way in.
Yeah. Finished race 5. Oh yeah, about 20% in.
I'll put $10 down that they're going to change it again.
Yeah, I can see that. Oh yeah, I'll have to. I don't know if I really want to bet against that. I'll bet against it. Sure.
Okay,
I'll
sounds
say
good.
they stay V carb. How about this? The announcers are told to change the name.
Yeah.
Is that it? Like the announcers are told, hey, we need to call V-Carb something else. Is that?
Well, that's going to be interesting. Like, let's look in 2 weeks and see like when it says race results and you look at the constructors.
Oh yeah,
I think it's still going to be RB.
I think it probably will, but
they're just trying something from it's like when you try to give yourself your own nickname.
Oh yeah,
Or like in the office, it's like, hey Andy, and he's like, it's Drew now.
It's Drew now.
And they're like, no, we're not going to call you
we're not
that.
gonna call you that. No,
We're not going to call you V-Carb. You're baby RB. So yeah, nicknames are great. I always wanted a nickname, and I learned though you can't give yourself a nickname.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
especially because nicknames you give yourself are kind of cool.
Yeah,
and it's like, but I also don't think like, hey, what do you? I race for V Carb. Like, I don't know.
Like, there's no way Iceman walked into the locker room and was like, people call me Iceman.
And we can, if we remember, we can have a whole segment on military call signs.
Oh sure.
Yeah. Oh gosh. On to race procedures and updates.
Yes.
And we kind of alluded to this earlier. So going into the season, it was from the time the first qualifying starts until the time the last race ends, you can't touch your car.
Right.
That has changed this year. So now at the start of the race weekend, you have your sprint qualifying, your sprint race, and then they have the sprint race and the Grand Prix qualifying separated by about 3 or 4 hours. At least that's what it was in China. And you can touch your car during that. You can fix your car. You can make modifications within reason. I'm not sure what that reason is, but you can do that. So that's good because then it means that you can kind of adjust things and you can have a sprint configuration and then have a longer configuration and all that. But we didn't know that. But I remember like last episode, we had firmly established you can't touch your car. That is a big change for this week.
Okay, good to know.
And it also does help some of the lower teams because now you're not boxed in so much,
Yep.
Racing upgrades and updates. So for China, I need to start doing better in talking about updates before they get here. But Haas and Alpine both brought updates to China.
Yes,
Haas
they did.
Pretty good. So you had with the race results, you had Nico Hülkenberg finishing 10th.
Yeah.
And then you had Kevin Magnussen finishing 16th. It's not terrible, especially since Haas has been a punchline since I can remember, and now they're either in the top 10, they're the bottom of the top 10 or forward of the bottom 10.
Exactly. For a lower mid-tier, lower tier team, they are competitive.
Yeah, which is great. Which is why again you need to have Haas on your F1 team.
Yeah.
So on to the next thing, damage and DNFs.
Yep.
So. Take a wild guess, and did I mention this to you before we started? I might have, and it's okay if I did. They announced how much money Williams has spent on repairing their cars in the first 4 races.
Oh, we talked about that.
Did we talk about it? Okay.
No. We talked about that off pod, but this is an interesting point.
$2 million. $2 million Williams Racing has spent just getting their cars so they can race them.
Oh my gosh.
Not actually improving their cars. That's $2 million that they could have spent bringing updates, bringing modifications, things like that they no longer have in their budget because they're just trying to replace their cars.
But let's do this real quick. Let's not just be negative here.
Okay.
Alex Albon finishes 12th.
Yeah.
Have you seen his Panda helmet?
That was awesome. That was awesome.
Like you got all these other racers that either have sponsorship or they have like fire and flames.
Right,
But
and
Alex Albon, big old panda face. I loved it.
It's just great. And I don't know if that was what was behind that of a sponsor. I know Joe Gonus, he had the map of like the metro rails and stuff.
I've seen that. Yeah, that's super
that was
cool.
super sick.
Yeah.
But
okay.
no, the panda.
But then, you know what? Logan Sargent, his strategy of finishing the race, it's paying off.
It is.
Because you know what? P17, baby. And
done.
And where was he in qualifying?
Let me check.
He was 20th.
He was 20th.
That's some overtake points there.
Let's go ahead and look at his
That's not overtake points. That's moving up on the pole points.
And again next week, if you're just tuning in late to the podcast, we will do a deep dive into where everybody got their points from, what kind of points come from sprint versus Grand Prix and stuff. But Logan Sargent finished China with 8 points.
That's his second best.
He finished Japan with 9.
So if you've had him on the past 2 weeks, that's 17 points you got from Logan Sargent. Social media aside, the memes aside, the boy can get you some points.
He can.
Yeah.
You're my countryman. We love you, Logan.
And this is a fantasy F1 podcast, and you are a valid player in that game.
You are absolutely a valued player in this game.
Don't crash. Just make it to the end, man.
And let's go ahead and, again, not to be fair, because, again, not to be unfair, but with Daniel Ricciardo. So I mean, go back and look. My record is very clear of how much I was infatuated with him being in being in Formula One.
And it was grounded in solid logic.
It was grounded in solid logic. I'm like, dude, this guy, and I can reread his pedigree. We've talked about it enough. DNFs twice, 2 races in a row.
Yep.
Total in Japan, he took negative 19 points. Total in China, because he had the sprint, he took negative 9 points.
Yep.
And so no matter how much, I feel like he and Valtteri Bottas trying to flip, but if it wasn't for
but here's the thing,
team,
I have less anger in my heart for VCarb than I do for Kick Sauber. I feel like Daniel Ricciardo is the eternal victim of circumstances. I mean,
yes.
Okay, he's not completely blameless,
yeah.
But again, I saw a meme recently. Have you ever seen the movie Hot Rod with Andy Samberg, 2007, where like he does stunts on his little moped?
Maybe.
Oh, that movie is such a hidden gem.
Okay,
it's not. It's in the mainstream, but it's one of those. It didn't do great in theaters, but then people bought it on DVD, and it's hilarious.
That is the second Andy Samberg reference we've made in this podcast.
Oh my gosh,
he was on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, he's Andy Samberg, friend of the pod.
Yep.
No, but like there's this whole sequence where he gets bad news, and so he goes out into the woods to punch dance out his rage, and like there's this whole like minute-long sequence where he's doing increasingly complex dance moves, and he's like even on a pommel horse in the like set up in the woods.
Oh, that's awesome!
And it's incredible, and then all of a sudden he trips on a log and then like falls down this mountainside for about 45 seconds, and it's just like and it's insane. But someone of course superimposed like Daniel Ricciardo's career. It's like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 is all him doing these amazing dance moves,
things.
and then all of a sudden boom, hits the log, 21, 22, 23, and he's just flying down the mountain. And that has continued this year. I think everyone still sees the potential that he brings.
Yeah.
But
he has to not get rear-ended by Lance, by Lance Stroll.
Yeah, but all of a sudden, like he'll get through a race, but Yuki shows potential. Or he'll get just killed by Lance Stroll. And again, he's still in the fight because Yuki also got taken out this time around. I feel so badly for both drivers on that team,
because none of that was their fault. They were all doing their exact job.
Exactly.
And stuff happens. And do I mean to throw too many rocks at Lance Stroll? It's easy to do now, but George Russell, when he crashed a couple races ago, right in the last lap, he said that he was going at this one turn. He always glances down to adjust something on his steering wheel and glances up.
Yep.
It's only a fraction of a second. And that was it.
It's long enough.
And if you watch the interviews with like Daniel Ricciardo implies that Lance Stroll wasn't even looking up when he hit. So Lance Stroll coming up on a turn, glance down, maybe adjust his brakes, maybe do whatever. But then the 3 cars in front of him all start locking up.
Yeah.
Everything happens so quick. So I'm not trying to sit here and be like, hey, he's a bad driver. But him glancing down a second, just like with George Russell, glancing down a second, and that's it. You glance down at a second, and now you're rear-ending somebody. And if you're Daniel Ricciardo, you're like, dude, I'm just trying to have a race here.
Exactly. And Lance Stroll's handling of that from a media perspective could have been a little more gracious.
Yeah,
We can talk about that in a little bit, but
Absolutely.
let's talk Lance Stroll for a second.
Okay.
Because I see and I appreciate you trying to say, hey, dude has been driving the fastest cars in the world for years here, and there is some legitimacy to that. But let's take a snapshot look at Lance Stroll's career.
Yeah.
Guy can drive, okay?
Yeah.
He's 25 years old right now.
Feels so old.
I know. But I think he took the career path of like a professional gymnast where like those athletes peak at maybe 17, 18 years old.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I feel like Lance Stroll is a gymnast in an F1 car.
I don't think about it that way. That's
because here's why.
Okay.
2004. So guy's born in 1998. So that's fun.
That was the year. In case you're curious, that was the year I graduated. That was my freshman year of high school was when he was born.
Yeah, same. 2014, he's the Italian F4 champion.
2014.
So this is at age 16.
Gosh.
2015, he's the Toyota Racing Series champion.
Okay.
2016, he's the European Formula 3 champion. 2017 is his debut year in Formula 1.
Okay.
And he's the second youngest Grand Prix racer to get on the podium ever. So like he's age 18 and 30 days or something like that.
And he made podium?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So he had potential.
Yeah.
But again, since then, over the course of his F1 career, 3 podiums ever, 148 races. And even with that, I can't throw too many stones at him yet because you've got Nico Hülkenberg. He's like, forever the bridesmaid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude knows how to drive, but
Yeah.
he hasn't gotten to a podium. Carlos Sainz didn't have a race win until like 1 or 2 years ago.
Okay.
Now he's got a total of 3, but everyone's like, Sainz!
Yeah.
But those stats aren't too far off yet.
Yeah.
But then you look at his, I almost said filmography because I like movies too much. I'm sorry. But let's look at his F1 career.
Okay.
2017 to 2018, he's with Williams. How does he get on Williams? His dad donates $80 million or contributes $80 million to Williams.
Oh, no kidding.
So season 1, he finishes 12th overall. For the 2018 season, he finishes 18th overall. 2019 and 2020, he moves over to Racing Point,
who did they become?
which is a British team.
Oh, okay.
His dad and his investment buddies had bought that team.
Gotcha.
And he moves over to Racing Point. In his first season there, he and guess who his teammate is on Racing Point?
I'm gonna say Fernando Alonso just because we're talking about it.
No, Sergio Perez.
Really?
Yep. In 2019, he gets 21 total points. He was outscored by Checo on 18 out of 21 races that he participated in. In 2020, he gets 11th overall. He scores only 75 out of the 210 points that Constructor got that year. And then in 2021, Racing Point becomes Aston Martin, which is the car company owned by his dad.
Father. Oh.
And so 21, he's 13th overall. 22, he's 15th overall. 23 was actually his best season where he was 10th overall. But I think he peaked in season 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And then has survived in the league. I'm sorry, survived on the grid with a lot of help from dad since then. And he has made no friends along the way. If you want to play a drinking game, read through his Wikipedia biography.
Yeah.
And every time a sentence starts with Stroll crashed when, Stroll crashed into, you'll be hammered drunk within minutes.
That's awesome.
And so I'm like, this is not the first time he's crashed into Daniel Ricciardo.
Really?
Oh no. And so like and then and in this race alone, he hits Ricciardo. Ricciardo hits Piastri, who now goes from P5 to P8. He's crashed into Norris before. He's crashed into Alonso before. Or no, he hasn't crashed into Alonso before, but Alonso has mentioned there's a gap. There's definitely a gap in point accrual here.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want to make a difference, we might want to talk about options. I think we're entering a point where Lance Stroll's dad can't ignore the fact that he might be more of a hindrance than an asset on the team.
Because at what point is, and I am by no means I'm not a good enough driver to race an F1. I drive a Honda. I'm not a good enough driver to race an F1.
I mean, Max Verstappen drives a Honda. So.
Actually, that's true. I drive the same brand as Max Verstappen. I'm going to ignore the fact that mine is a Civic.
Fair.
But I keep fantasizing about getting the paddle shifters for my Honda Civic. Nice. I think that'd be wonderful. But no, at some point, when's the money? Because I can understand the idea of it being, okay, we just got to let him get those reps.
Yeah.
Right. You got to stay sharp.
Oh, sure. And on Drive to Survive, he's made, Lance's dad has made zero effort to hide the fact that he's like, no, I want to do this with my son. This is awesome.
And if you have the money and that's what you want to do, then mad props to you.
Sure.
But at some point, as soon as you're like, this needs to be a money-making venture.
Right.
And
like if you're paying for Alonso, who can still drive, pair him with someone who can complement that skill set.
Or if you are trying to completely agree with it, or concerning Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, if you have your son who, man, really needs some pedigree, maybe really needs some mentorship, are you going to keep a 2-time world champion who is evidently cool with not winning races because he doesn't have a good enough car?
Exactly.
On your team to try and squeeze out every little bit of knowledge that dude might have.
Right. But again, at this point, though, like average career for an F1 driver doesn't last this long.
No, it doesn't.
And so, and with the results that he's bringing to the table or not bringing to the table, it doesn't surprise me that, again, if you go around the social medias, there's 19 F1 drivers and Lance Stroll. And again, I that's why I wanted to make sure I read through his previous career accolades. He's got them. You don't win races, you don't win championships on accident, but I think this just demonstrates the level of the gap in performance levels between formulas formulas.
Yeah.
This is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And so you've done great things at those other levels. Very few people can do things at the F1 level.
Yeah.
And if you're not there's nothing to be ashamed of. But there is something to be ashamed of if your seat is being bought every year.
And that is the perfect segue into our next section, Hot Goss. So our third Brooklyn Nine-Nine, actually it's a recall of the first.
It's recalling the first one.
But that's okay. So the gossip. So I enjoy rumor mill as much as the next person. And you and I talk about it plenty.
Oh, sure.
Offline. But I try to get my news from F1.com. Right? Like I try to get my news from legitimate sources, and then as you're scrolling through the Instas and the social medias, you get to see all the quotes and then verify it. But this is a perfect transition from Lance Stroll because he was doing a pre-race, or he was doing a pre-race interview with my man Will Buxton, I think. But I say my man like I know him, but one of my favorite commentators, Will Buxton, and basically, he was like, so are you signed up for next year? And Lance Stroll's like, well, I'm just focusing on China or Japan or whichever race it was. I think it was China. He's like, no, I'm just focusing on the race. And I was like, come on, man. Like, you're going to be in. He's like, no, FC, we just have to focus on the race. And again, I don't think there's any credit to it. But however, given this conversation, what if his seat is no longer assured?
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
What if he has to actually earn his seat this year and he has to at least do something that shows he's progressing?
Oh, I'll play this game with you all day, dude. Like, get Carlos
This
signed.
is hot goss. This isn't necessarily real.
This is total theoretical time where we can...
What if he actually has to earn it?
Okay, so I'm playing my unlimited chip right now. Carlos Sainz next year, baby.
Yeah?
Go Alonso and Sainz. Alonso's happy to still be racing at his age.
Mm-hmm.
Sainz is hungry.
Yeah.
He wants it. And the car is good. Is it top tier? No, but you can still scare McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely competitive with Mercedes at this stage in the game.
Yeah.
You're getting it's a failure if both cars are not getting points.
I would agree.
That's a good place to be in.
It is.
And so Sainz will do some crazy things to try to win a race. Alonso will, I don't know anything about his personality, but at this stage in his career, to still be a part of the action. I think that's a good pairing.
He has shown next level aggression. He showed next level aggression in China. And I would really much rather talk about this like while we're watching it, and maybe at some point we can start doing that on the pod. But basically he challenged Mac, and I forget if it was at the sprint or whatever, but he like pushed the front drivers, and he put on soft tires and everybody else went mediums, or mediums and everybody else went hards, or however that works. And he was like, nah, like I'm going to try and beat you at the front. And if it doesn't work, then I'm falling back.
Still absolutely someone you have to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And he forces you to respect him.
Yeah.
And every time, and especially when we were racing China, every time he turned around, he was trying a new strategy. He was going in to put on mediums to try and do an undercut or an overcut. He was putting on softs when everybody else went mediums to try and pass somebody. And he's like taking all these gambles because he's signed for next year.
Right.
And they're not getting points. And so now is the time to, again, this is all hot goss. Now is the time for him to be like, all right, my future's secured. And then he's even said it a few times. It's probably my last contract.
Right.
So guess what? If you are ever going to be, you know what, let's try something crazy here.
Yeah.
I want to, everybody else is going one way. I'm going to go to the rest and just see if I can outskill him.
Sure.
And you have Aston Martin. They're willing to let him do that. They want points.
Dude, drop $1 in the jar, man.
They have Aston Martin. They want the points. Darn it. I really should get a big jar and start doing it. I think that'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
And they'll have pizza for them.
That'll be great.
Gosh.
I would love to live in that world. However, I keep seeing posts here and there about signs potentially going over to Kick Sauber. That like there's a wow, lots of words. There is a financially enticing offer to ignore for him.
Really?
Which would be a big power play because it's Audi owns Kick Sauber.
Okay.
So that's essentially Team Audi. They want signs, and then they would want a German racer. So I've also heard talks of pursuing Nico Hülkenberg. So it would be signs and Hülkenberg on Kick Sauber next year, and if they can lure him over with the money and then fix their engineering and pit woes.
Yeah.
That's an aggressive move that I really respect for that constructor. How much would it have to be to get signs to go to them based on the circus that they have right now?
And again, this is hot goss, but I think they would have to give him a lot of money.
It'd have to be
because he has shown that in a Ferrari he can win.
Yeah.
So you would have to, and again, I have never met him. But as soon as there's somebody who is, I'm guessing based on your quintessential driver, you've been racing since you were a fetus, and you are ultra aggressive and really want to win.
Yeah.
As soon as you're like, man, I'm losing my Ferrari seat, put me in the right car, I can win for you.
Yeah.
How much money would you need to be offered to go to the car that right now has a hard time getting their drivers out of the pits, and this very last race, somebody DNF'd because of a no-kidding power unit failure? So bad, and I'm sorry, I don't know how you do an engine failure and you can't get the car out of gear, but that's something different. Hot goss. But how much money would it be?
I don't know how much he's earning right now. Right. It has to be. We'll if we had done our due diligence on this, that's a great theoretical question though, because again, drivers get so fed up when it is a clear case of the driver outperforming the vehicle that they are in. Like that's where all look at Lewis Hamilton, look at Lando Norris up until maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
They were like, I'm gonna jump ship right now.
Yeah.
Hamilton's been with Mercedes forever, and he's ready to be done with them
because they keep going. They went the wrong direction with the car, and I'm not trying to get off on Mercedes right now too much. But
Hamilton's making $30 million right now.
Okay,
and again, I can't imagine Ferrari's going to be the cheapest. They're not going to offer him less. But
so so you have to know Ferrari's opened up their purse strings again. All gossip that we're cultivating at this point.
Oh, for sure.
But you know that Ferrari opened up the purse strings to pay for Hamilton. So if you're Sainz, and again, the rumor mill that you might be going to the new when Kick Sauber transitions to Audi, right?
Yes.
Because they are Audi. They're owned by Audi now,
yeah.
but they're going when they change their name next season.
Are they going to change their name?
I hope so.
I hope so
Kick
too.
Saubers.
I don't again like V Carbs.
V Carb, yeah.
Like what is Kick? Is that a brand?
Kick Saubers and I don't want to speculate, but yeah, Kick Saubers has to be a brand name.
Gotcha.
And I have no clue. I like their paint job, but I don't know. Keep saying and also since I keep saying so I keep saying Austin Martin instead of Aston Martin, there is a good chance that I'm mispronouncing Sauber.
Oh no, for sure. Because European languages, as dumb as English is. I'm sorry, French. Like you've got the market cornered on weird letters that don't make any noises.
But also, yeah, it's like such a romantic language, French.
No, it is. But let's stick an EAUX at the end and not acknowledge it at all.
Yeah, just let it go.
No, or like SAILLES, like Versailles.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. What is that?
Who knows?
Anyway, I love you, France. I'm sorry. This is a weird sidetrack. But Carlos Sainz is making his contract for this year is worth up to $14 million.
Okay.
He's making an $8 million base salary, and then there's $6 million in performance-based incentives.
So what if a little car company called Audi comes up to you and offers you $20 million?
I'd say you took the words out of my mouth. I'd say give me $20 million guaranteed, and I'm your guy.
How many years? How many year contract? 2?
Yes.
You want 1 year to work out the kinks. Yeah, and 1 year to make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's account for some growing pains.
Yep.
Growing pains. I didn't say growing pains. Growing pains. And then after year 2, if I've done well, then we can talk again and see what we're looking at.
Because for me, again, rumor mill, hot goss, I would want. How old is Carlos Sainz?
I don't know.
We can look at that. It doesn't really matter for this conversation. But my thing is, you don't want to get pigeonholed somewhere where you can't get out of your contract until you're too old to be wanted by somebody else.
And that's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, you wouldn't want that. But this is some great hot goss.
So,
okay, and let me make sure. So Aston Martin.
Yeah,
there was a long time ago, probably not too long, a big hot goss about Taylor Swift dating Fernando Alonso. I don't remember.
I mean, it would have had to be. It would have to be a couple years ago.
Pre-Travis Kelce. Oh, that's true. Yeah. It had been pre-Travis. It was pre-Travis Kelce.
Gotcha.
So, and for all you Swifties out there, of which I gladly say I am, when I haven't been to see one of her concerts, just because I am not that rich. But anybody can become a global phenomenon like that. Like that is amazing.
Oh yeah, and she's had the staying power and a lot of smart strategy.
Yep, there. Absolutely. She's a beast, and it's an overnight success. It only took 20 years. But she's working out. But anyway, so before Travis Kelce, before all of that started, before the Eras Tour, there was a rumor that she was dating Fernando Alonso. And he never came out and said no, because the dude's got class, and he's not like, I mean, just Google it. He's never like, I'm not dating her. He's like, dude, like, I'm not getting in my personal life. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, it's straight, like, over, and I forget what the, is it en blanche, whatever. But it's like, no, like, I'm not talking to you about that. Like, done. I'm not talking about who I'm dating.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift, I don't know whatever she said about it, but it was all purely really unfounded. I'm not even sure how it started. Well, she just released her most recent album like a couple nights ago, and it's called The Tortured Poet Society.
Yes.
All right. And it turned out being secretly a double album. I know. She released 15 songs.
Then
it's like, surprise, here's another 15 songs no one ever knew about.
It's because she cares about the fans.
She does care about the fans. So she, like, and don't get me wrong, my wife and I, we're like, literally, we're listening to that in the car whenever we drive.
I have a 10-year-old daughter, so I'm a contact, I've contact fandom, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in one of her songs, she said, her lyrics go, quote, "I'm an Aston Martin that you steered straight into the ditch," unquote.
That's brilliant.
It's brilliant. So, of course, all the Swiftie, we're the Venn diagram of all your Taylor Swift fandom and all your F1 fandom. When they overlapped right there,
yeah, everyone
went nuts. And so Fernando Alonso posted something about it.
Did he?
And all he is, and again, maybe it was just a meme. That's why this is in hot goss. Like, none of this is founded. And maybe it was just like something that somebody else made and then posted, whatever. But it showed him holding an iPad, and the music's voiceovering, like playing, and he looks, and when it gets to that part, he like gave a knowing
looks
look
up
at
and
the
smiles.
camera.
Oh,
like,
that's
smiles and
great.
went back. Like just pure class, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, what's going on? So I thought that was hilarious.
Again, smart of her. Also, as much as I have hated the bandwagon fandom for the NFL in the last year, you can't ignore the fact that she brought in hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue just purely to the NFL.
Absolutely.
By her association with the team. As much as I would want to wash my hands and my mouth out if she became associated with Formula One, it would be the best thing for the sport. Do you know how many millions of rabid fans would suddenly emerge?
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Well, okay. Well, this is interesting because when you started talking about Taylor Swift on this podcast, I'm kind of going, where's he going with this? Okay, but you landed the plane.
Yeah, and
I appreciate it.
And I wanted to make sure, like this. That's why this is under the hot goss section. Because it has zero impact in reality. It makes like there's it. She is not dating Fernando Alonso. She never has dated Fernando Alonso.
No.
It's never been founded. But it's really smart of her just to drop. And this is, again, this isn't a Taylor Swift podcast. This is a fantasy Formula One podcast. But I think it is so great. It is impressive to me. I don't care who you are. That one line in one of her songs that talks about friendship bracelets. Now, anybody, if you go to a Taylor Swift concert, you have beaded friendship bracelets. Laura Winner, who is a F1 TV announcer.
Yeah.
During a time off, she recently went with some friends to a Taylor Swift concert, and she posted on her Instagram a picture of all their friendship bead bracelets that they have.
Yeah.
And now it's like part of society.
I know, yeah.
And then she mentions Aston Martin once, and here we are talking about it.
Yeah, no, that level of pull is
it's
obscene.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's obscene. It is. It is absolutely obscene. And I can't wait to finish listening to that album because I am a Swiftie. I'm just not that. I haven't listened to it yet.
That's fine.
And now the next thing is to discuss actual fantasy F1 on this fantasy F1 podcast. Now that we talked about the hot goss, Taylor Swift, what went on with the races, tracks being designed in yin yang patterns. Now let's actually talk about fantasy F1. So how did your team do this week?
All right, so
mine hurts, so I don't want to talk about mine yet.
I've got some ups and downs here, so let me click on this. This is the first time I am looking at my teams here since the race.
First impressions.
So, interesting stuff here. So team 1, Newbie Alpha. That team was Charles Leclerc, Logan Sargent, Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, Yuki Tsunoda, and then my constructors. So this is my safer team. My constructors are Red Bull Racing and Ferrari. Let's go constructors first. 126 points for Red Bull because you got two-thirds of the podium as per usual is Red Bull. Ferrari got me 74 points.
Okay.
So Charles Leclerc was, of course, he was my top driver. He got me 68 points because he had my 2X, so 34 points times 2. Logan Sargent, 8 points, baby. Kevin Magnussen, 17 points. Nico Hülkenberg, 4 points.
See, but he got you in the positive, and that's great for Haas.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Look, 4 out of my 5 drivers are Williams and Haas and RB. And I still have a net positive of, I'm doing math on 29. I still got 24 points from them.
There we go.
Cumulatively. That's not bad. So a total of 291 points. And that was still with 4.5 million in cap space. Team 2. This one was interesting, and I just got lucky. And you know what? It should have been better, but anyway, I'll go into it. Sorry. RB Dragon Fruit. So that's the one where I perpetually have Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing.
Okay.
So constructors are Red Bull Racing, Aston Martin as my other constructor.
Ooh, that
was to make room, financial room to have Max on the team.
Okay, gotcha.
There's no way I can.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I went Max Verstappen, 116 points because he was my 2X.
Mm-hmm.
I went Pierre Gasly. We've been ignoring Alpine for a while just because they're perpetually middle of the pack. I took a gamble because I had a little bit of money left over. So Pierre Gasly got me 13 points.
Holy smoke, he did. I just clicked on him, and he had 5 points in Australia, 5 points in Japan, 13. He hasn't. I mean, he took a DNF in Saudi. And
Yeah,
man.
So
okay.
So again, they're just not the sexy pick because
season wide 9 points
because they no exactly they still cost more than they should. But this just happened to be a good week to keep him.
Yeah.
This team also had Yuki Tsunoda, unfortunately, so -6 there. But Kevin Magnussen, 17 points. Logan Sargent, 8 points. And then Red Bull got me 126, and Aston Martin got me 29. So not terrible.
That's not terrible. And Yuki Tsunoda, so he took the DNF, but he still only went -6 because he had done that well. That means he had 14 points otherwise.
Correct.
So if he hadn't taken the DNF, and even if he had just gotten 0,
it would have been So this has been by far the best performance for my number 2 team.
And before we start throwing shade at Yuki, because I'm like this close to being like, V-carb, what the hell?
Yeah.
Man, I mean, he DNFs, you only take -6 points. Like that's him working for you. Like that's him doing well.
No,
like,
absolutely.
Like that's what you want from a middle of the pack, bottom of the pack driver when they DNF and you only get to take a slight punch like that. That's good.
Exactly. And now that I keep hearing it, V-carb, I keep hearing V-card. It's not great.
That is awesome.
Okay, so team. Okay.
Oh gosh.
So I made a. I on my third team, this is the
Stathams.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was initially driver heavy, but I saw the light and got smarter. I tried an experiment where I decided to go Ferrari, and I made financial room for McLaren because what I wanted to do was I wanted to have McLaren and at least one McLaren driver.
Okay.
And I figured China's not a bad place to do that because you got a lot of straightaways, and that's where they shine. Unfortunately, I could not afford the right McLaren driver
because he's worth like $23 million or
Correct.
whatever. Right?
Lando Norris is too expensive yet, but Oscar Piastri's decent, and if I'm doubling down on his performance and I have the constructor, maybe that'll work for me.
Yeah,
it didn't. And you know what? What's the booster that looks like the?
Oh, that is
looks like the steering wheel.
That's cruise control, autopilot. I think it's autopilot. Yeah.
So So here's the interesting thing. I went autopilot, so it assigned my 2X to whoever was the strongest, right?
Yeah.
So McLaren gets me 48 points, not terrible. Ferrari gets me 74 points, not terrible. Here is where you want to focus on your in fantasy Formula 1, focus on top tier drivers and your budget drivers. Because check this out. Oscar Piastri did a decent job, got P8, healthily in the points, would have been P5, but he only got me 12 fantasy points total. Kevin Magnussen got me 17 points naturally, and so autopilot gave the 2X to him to get me 34 points. So again, Kevin Magnussen is less than half the price of Oscar Piastri, but he's generally going to get you consistent points, and in this case, 5 more points than Oscar did.
And he qualified 17th. I just looked it up. Qualified 17th, finished 16th in the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And then finished 10th in the sprint, which is still out of the points.
Sure.
So he wasn't anywhere near points.
No.
Because of how he zoomed around and he did a bunch of overtakes and whatever.
So this is such a perfect perfect depiction of the disconnect between Formula 1 racing and fantasy Formula 1 strategy.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing. I picked the right Kick Sauber driver this time. Zogan Yu got me 13 points.
There we go.
And then I also still had money with to hang on to Fernando Alonso.
That's great.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing. My point total. Oh, sorry. Fernando Alonso got me 15 points. Great. I should be so happy with this because look, 34 from Kevin Magnussen, 12 from Oscar Piastri, 8 from Logan Sargent, 13 from Zogan Yu. Like I happen to pick well on my drivers, but because I don't have Red Bull as a constructor, my point total is 194. So like within the constraints I put on myself, I did well. But is this team going to be competitive on the international scale or even within a league at 194 points? No.
And when you add up all the points, if you do 194, I'm no math magician, 194 take away 74. Right?
Why am I taking away 74?
Because that gives you how many points you would have gotten without Ferrari. That's how many points
correct.
you got aside from Ferrari.
194
plus 74 to minus 74, 789, that's 120.
So that's what's wild is this team that I have put together went as well as it could have because so many things could have gone wrong. If I'd picked Valtteri Bottas at a very similar price point instead of Zhou Guanyu, I'd have a DNF instead of 13 points. So that would have been a negative 20 right there. Logan Sargent could have crashed. He has done it. He does it on occasion. It's kind of his thing. This could have gone so much worse, and it didn't. And even though it didn't, even though the stars aligned, this team is a non-factor in a league.
Because Red Bull, to back that up, Red Bull got 100. Just the constructor itself got 126 points this week.
There is such a gap in the top of the line to your bottom tier driver price points, that if you focus it all on the middle, you're losing out.
You're losing it out.
Yeah, you need a couple of big purchases, and then fill in the rest with your budget drivers that will finish the race and maybe move up a spot or two.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you have a chance in fantasy Formula One.
Yeah.
So the Lewis Hamiltons, the McLaren drivers, the Aston Martin drivers, I'll say even the Alpine drivers.
Yeah.
They are too much money for too little impact.
Yeah. You just gotta. That's a good point. You have to get your good, strong constructors. You have to get your one strong driver, your Carlos Sainz, your Lewis Hamilton. You're not Lewis Hamilton. Sorry, your Carlos Sainz, your Sergio Perez, your Charles Leclerc right now, and get that top driver, your bottom constructors, and then you just fill it in.
Correct. So my team Newbie Alpha, the first team that I talked about.
Yeah,
I got 291 points. That's a bad day for that team, because a lot of those racers did not. I had Charles Leclerc, and he didn't even make the podium, and he's my top driver. But I got 291 points with that team. So
yeah, and just in your Newbie Alpha, just your constructors. I know I'm reiterating, but just your constructors in Newbie Alpha got more points than your entire team in the Stathams.
Correct, and the Stathams, they were actually right there.
Were they? Because you had 170, you had 74 in Ferrari, 126.
Oh, yeah, math. You're right. That's 200 points.
That's 200. Yeah, so I mean, again, roughly, yeah. Yes, exactly. Son of a gun.
The constructors alone still outscored my driver heavy team, which did well for its within its sandbox.
Oh man, that's rough. And yeah, if Fernando hadn't gotten the tire, you might have gotten an extra 10 or 15 points, but it wouldn't have been.
But anyway, no, I love that experiment. You have to have the solid constructors. Drop the money on the constructors.
Yeah.
Fill in with what you got left.
And what is your in your global league, real quick, before we sign off, in your global league, what is your, I guess Newbie Alpha would probably be your best team.
Oh, by far, yeah.
Yeah, what's your points there? What's your ranked position?
My team. Where am I looking for that?
So you go under, so what you do is you go under, and I'm going to keep this in a podcast because this is good. So you go under leagues.
Sure. Yep. Leagues, and then you go to public leagues. Oh.
And this is how you find out where you rack and stack overall, right? So you go into leagues, go into public leagues, and then you click starter leagues.
Oh, I was in featured leagues. Okay,
yeah.
Here we go.
And then you'll see the global league right there.
And this is just another real life demonstration as to why you should do this on your computer instead of your phone. Oh, because the phone infrastructure is pretty rough.
Yeah.
Okay, so public leagues.
What does it say your rank is?
Starter league here. Is it starter league?
Yep, starter league, and then the top one is going to be global league.
Okay, so team 1, I'm 57,534.
Okay.
Team 2, 182,000. Team 3, 773,000.
So you're 57. You said you're 57,000?
Yeah, 57,534.
All right, so you said you're 57,534, and the guy I have, the team I have that I keep at the bottom is leagues. Come on. Is public leagues, starter leagues, is 2,123,000. So you're still in the top, 5%, 3%?
No, top 2.7%.
2.7%.
Yeah.
See? So this is still working.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, so you're doing great. And this is a point to kind of drive home is the fact that we're 5 races in, there's still 20 races to go. And you're going to have people dropping off, and you have people misusing stuff. And so as soon as you have, you can sit there and be, overall, you can be, you don't need to finish in the top 10
right
per race, top 10% for any race. But once it averages out, you're going to be fine.
And let's just do this for our fellow countrymen. We got, over 300,000 teams in the U.S. alone.
Okay.
So under public leagues, you can see where you are in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm ranked 9,898.
Oh, that's great.
Out of 300,000. So let's do that math. and we'll call it 300.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
So
Yeah, there's 300. Was they?
Okay, so yeah, I'm still in the top 3%.
Top
there
3%,
3.1%.
And man, see, so it does work, and I don't want to know we're not going to do the math on the teams that are at the bottom. We're not going to do the math on the Stathams.
Oh, no.
I'm kind of curious actually to see.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that real quick.
Let's just see where I am.
We're about to sign off, so if you're bored, you can go ahead and leave. But basically,
hey, you know what? So the Stathams are still in the top third. Like,
see,
I'm ranked 133,000 out of 300,000+ U.S. based teams.
Okay.
So
yeah. So there are 368,452 U.S. based teams.
Okay. So then, then
it makes you go even up.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm in the 2 percentile.
So
for my top team.
What you do is you take your rank in the global league. You take your rank, divide what rank you are by, hit divide and go enter 2123106. Enter times 100. Enter, and that will give you what percent you are in the world.
Yep.
And that's what we were just doing here. And so even when you have your teams that are doing bad, you're still in the top third.
Oh,
which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if you want to be good at fantasy Formula One, you should watch this podcast.
Yeah, my top teams remain in the top 3% worldwide. Worst team is in the top third of the world. That's not too shabby.
That's pretty good. That is all we have on the list for today. Do you have any parting shots, saved rounds, anything you want to talk about?
I do. We love feedback. We crave feedback. Can you please leave a 5-star review? Leave comments because we see them, we enjoy them. Whether we'll take the hate mail too. That's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Please do the like and subscribe stuff. Please send this to people who you think may be interested because we'd like to grow.
Yes, we would love that. So great, thank you.
Yeah.
You all have a great day. And real quick. The next episode
Did you say Rut-row?
I said Rut-row. Rut-row. The next episode will be dropping next week.
Yep.
And that is going to be a deep dive into the fantasy F1 numbers concerning sprints and Grand Prix and juxtaposing them and things like that.
Today you heard what happened. Next week, tune in to find out what you should do.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining. Cheers.